No, there's no such thing as true independence.
Do you think your supporters understand that?
Stop interrupting for a second.
I'm just asking.
90% of our trade is north and south with the United States of America.
What's up, you guys, and welcome back. My name's Natasha, and this is Behavior Breakdowns. My co-host PJ is currently out on squirrel watch duty, but hopefully we will see him shortly. Today we are breaking down the body language and behavior of Vassy Kapelos, as well as Jeffrey Rath. If you don't know who Mr. Rath is, he is a constitutional lawyer, a political activist, and one of the prominent figures in the Alberta Separatist movement. Vassy interviewed Rath at the Conservative Convention a couple days ago. Let's take a look at some of the body language and behavior that we see from both of these two people.
I listened to some of the interviews you've given to other media this week, and you were disputing the reporting that garnered all that reaction from the premiers. And I wanted to actually just get you on the record.
Oh, sure.
So we can
the
clarify.
Financial Times piece, I'll
Correct,
state for the record, It was fake news. I'm very careful with anybody to say that we haven't been offered any money by the United States. We're not seeking money from the United States. We're conducting a feasibility study on the availability of a sufficient credit facility to get Alberta over the hump in the hypothetical eventuality that Ottawa is going to play hardball.
There's a couple things to point out right away. The first is that this feels like a bit of a spur of the moment interview. I think that most likely Vassy and her cameraman ran into Rath here, maybe walking around the area, and decided to pop a mic on him and get an interview. The framing is a little bit odd, the way they're positioned in front of the building. Cameraman or camera person is using a handheld camera. They're not mounted on a tripod, so we have more shaky camera movement. Nobody's really in focus. It does feel more like a spur of the moment interview, but Vassy does have some questions prepared, so perhaps she knew she would run into Rath at some point.
And try to cut off our money once Alberta declares itself independent from Canada. So, that FT article, starts out covert meetings between U.S. officials and fringe separatists. It was ridiculous. It was just a hit piece, by the globalist media. I'm really disappointed in the FT, actually. I used to read it when I was going to law school in London, and the paper's really gone downhill if that's the kind of trash they're publishing.
Rath is speaking very quickly. He's also outside where it's a bit cold, so the breath is getting more constricted, and we can hear it in the way that he speaks. It almost feels like he's a bit exasperated. He's a bit out of breath. When Rath starts talking about the Financial Times article and his dislike for that publication, we can see him starting to adapt with his hand. Now, it could just be that he's cold. He's maybe trying to warm up his fingers there, but normally when we see the body starting to self-soothe or self-pacify, we know that there is some mounting stress happening.
I had read other reporting previously that you had made trips to the United States. So
there's no doubt. No doubt we're making trips to the United States.
Can you just explain what you are doing?
We've held press conferences to tell people that we're going to the United States. We're exchanging information with senior officials in the U.S. State Department over the aspirations of Alberta for Albertans for independence, and talking to them about the types of things that would help Alberta move forward as a free and independent country.
Another little tip for you guys to remember is that our emotions are always contagious. Watch this moment here when Vassy cannot finish her sentence because Rath does cut her off. He starts talking. Vassy wanted to finish what she was saying, so there's a brief moment where the tensions go up, the volume of their voices go up as well.
There's no doubt we're making trips to the United States. Can you just explain what you are doing?
We can see that the tensions go up, their voices go up in pitch, and we can see the body language starting to happen here, both of them starting to express themselves with their hands. When someone else's energy starts to go up and starts to inflate, we often retaliate with that same response and with that same energy. So we can see that happening here for Rath and Kapelos as they actually start to mirror one another's body language and start to both use their gestures to emphasize their point. We can also get the first instance here that Vassy is a bit annoyed with Rath because, one, she wasn't able to finish her statement. She was cut off. And two, we can see her eyes narrow very briefly. She squints, she scrutinizes him for a moment. And right as the camera is about to cut her out of frame, we can see this look come across her face that just suggests she is not happy with Rath in this moment. Now for Vassy, I think that annoyance comes around one, she's been cut off. She wasn't able to finish her statement in the way that she intended it to come across. And two, the question that she was asking is really something that a lot of people have been speculating about. They've been talking about. It's a very juicy question for a news reporter to have with Rath here. And I think not being able to articulate it in the way that she wanted to definitely led to some annoyance for her.
We're sick and tired of David Eby threatening us with a veto and saying we're only getting a pipeline over his dead body and all of the foolishness that comes out of his mouth. And of course, the reaction to that from David Eby when he saw that his power was being taken away and that he no longer had power, he was no longer going to have power to constrain oil and gas development in Alberta on behalf of his communist masters in China, right, was to jump up and down and have a hysterical little hissy fit and say that, you know, we're engaged in treason and that real Albertans don't support independence. I mean, it was the most ridiculous display of on behalf of a premier that I've ever seen. He should be embarrassed, really.
Really interesting that when Rath says the comment about David Eby, the camera person doing their due diligence zooms out because we want to see Vassy's reaction to that comment. I think it's a useful mechanism to be able to use our body language to illustrate what it is that we're saying. And we see that here with Rath as he demonstrates the power from David Eby being taken away. He shows us this power being shifted somewhere else. So I think that was a really nice little gesture from Rath. We see Vassy do a lip press gesture. Now, that lip press usually comes around withheld thoughts and withheld opinions. That usually means that somebody is thinking of something that they want to say, but they are using their lips and their mouth as a barrier to prevent that information from coming out. They literally close down their mouth to withhold those thoughts and opinions. So whatever Vassy was thinking in that moment, she presses her lips together to prevent herself from saying those true thoughts and opinions. We can really hear the contempt that Rath obviously feels for Eby, especially around the word treason. We can hear that kind of mocking tone.
You know, we're engaged in treason and that real Albertans don't support independence.
And we can also hear it and see it on the emphasis of real Albertans. Rath puts his whole body into emphasizing real Albertans and exaggerating those words.
If we take David Eby out of the equation for a second, can you understand how on the face of it, Canadians would view, some Canadians outside of the ones that support your cause, who are not necessarily unempathetic to the frustrations expressed by people in this province, but who would view the idea of, people here meeting with a government that has, spoken the way it has about this country as a whole as problematic and seeking money to make this happen.
I understand that there's a lot of Ontarians and people in Quebec that suffer deeply from Trump derangement syndrome.
Vassy says, let's exclude Eby from this. We can see that Rath has a tongue jut, that tongue pokes out of the mouth, and we see that gesture happening a lot around distaste. We see it when somebody doesn't like an idea or doesn't like something that they are hearing or talking about. In this case, it's obvious that Rath is feeling that distaste towards Eby, and that tongue jut gesture happens from infancy when we no longer want to be fed. We use the tongue to push the bottle or push the nipple out of the mouth. So whenever we are no longer wanting to think or hear or talk about something, we often see that same gesture, that tongue jut happening even into adulthood.
But we're not doing anything untoward. It's absolutely, from our perspective, we're just conducting due diligence on behalf of our fellow Albertans. We're serious professionals. I mean, I've argued cases at the Supreme Court of Canada, for goodness sake. I mean, we take what we're doing very seriously, and obviously the attitude of the United States towards Alberta independence, which incidentally is overwhelmingly enthusiastic, is something that informs our movement going forward. If the United States said, oh God, we can't tolerate that, flies in the face of, the communist New World Order, we'll slap a 300% tariff on Albertans if they leave because we want you to remain resource slaves of the communist government in Ottawa, it would be a totally different conversation.
Chase Hughes from the behavioral panel would call this resume statements, and that's when somebody is injecting these little bits of information about themselves to help build their credentials, to kind of solidify themselves in their position.
We're serious professionals. I mean, I've argued cases at the Supreme Court of Canada, for goodness sake.
We have that coming out around professional people. We have that around I've been in the Supreme Court. I've testified in the Supreme Court. Those are things from Rath that he's using to help build trust in what he's saying. Now, I hope you guys are getting better at spotting contempt from watching this channel. We see it again come around the comment about the communist government in Ottawa. You can see the corner of the mouth raise there for Rath, obviously signaling a lot of disdain for the current administration and the current government in Ottawa.
And quite frankly, the Trump administration shows Albertans far more respect than is shown to Albertans by the government in Ottawa. Do you think three of us could get a meeting with Tim Hodgson to talk about the need for a pipeline to the Pacific Northwest so that David Eby can't continue to hold us hostage? Of course not, because they want us to be held hostage. So I understand that there are Canadians that are upset, especially in Ontario, that when Alberta leaves, that Ontarians for the first time in their lives are going to have to pay their own bills and pay the bills of the Maritimes that we've been paying for years. I understand that's upsetting to people, but they need to understand that Albertans are done, we're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
When Rath makes the comment that the Trump administration shows far more respect to Alberta than the government in Ottawa, we do see a shoulder shrug there. Shoulder shrugging usually happens around feelings of uncertainty. That to me is a bit of body language betrayal happening there, because if Rath truly felt that way, we probably wouldn't see the shoulder shrug happening. So I'm wondering if there's a bit of uncertainty for him around that statement. We also see another tongue jut happening when Mr. Rath says that there's no more conversations to be had. Rath's feelings towards Alberta's separatism and his sentiments towards the rest of Canada are very clear, and all of those feelings are coming out in his gestures and in his body language.
When you mentioned that you've met with people in the State Department, you feel as though that message has been conveyed to Scott Bessent. That's why he made the comments he did. How high up are the meetings that you're taking? Are there names, for example, of people that you're meeting with that we would recognize offhand?
I'm not sure about that. Probably. I mean, we're meeting at a very high level. People in our meetings are going, direct.
Stephen Miller?
I'm not going to say. I mean,
why not?
We're not, because we have an agreement with the people that we're meeting with that we're not disclosing the identities of the people that we're meeting with.
I know that there's a lot of mixed feelings on Vassy and her political stance, but I do think that she does a fairly good job here of remaining composed. Rath is a very large human. He has a very large presence, and not only that, but his personality also matches his size. It would be easy for somebody to get stampeded over by him. Do you see what I did there? When you have someone who is that size and with that type of personality, you really have to remain composed. You really have to remain convicted to drill those points in and to make sure that your presence doesn't get lost beneath the presence of someone like that. Vassy is continuing to press forward there with her questions, and we can see that Rath actually starts to get a little bit uncomfortable when she continues to ask for names.
Going, direct.
Stephen Miller?
I'm not going to say. I mean,
why not?
We're not, because we have an agreement.
We have some shoulder shrugging happening for Rath. We have some head shaking. The body is starting to react to some stress and some of that pressure that's coming from Vassy's line of questioning.
So
why not? May I ask?
Because it's an agreement. So that's all.
But again, would it be reasonable to question the motivations of making that
Well,
agreement?
that's probably why we're not talking about it. We don't want them being bothered by people from the press in Canada asking them silly questions. They don't want to be wasting their time answering questions from the press, right? And we're fine with that. We don't care.
I love that quick little head tilt that we have from Rath there. It's almost cartoon. Perhaps there's a little bit of disbelief, like he cannot believe that Vassy is continuing to press on these questions. There's a bit of bulk in the middle of this interview, so I'm gonna skip ahead towards the ending because there's a couple more interesting moments in terms of body language and behavior.
My point is, you have convinced people, and lots of them who have stopped me here, that, you know, what awaits a separate and free and independent Alberta is true independence.
No, there's no such thing as true independence.
Do you think your supporters understand that?
Stop interrupting for a second.
I'm just asking.
90% of our trade is north and south with the United States of America. So all of this phony, we hate the Americans, Canadians should be afraid of Americans, Alberta must be completely independent from the United States of America. We don't live in a vacuum. So even the premise of your question, quite frankly, and with respect, is quite silly.
We can hear so much more of the emotional response from Rath. I think Vassy's actually getting under his skin here. We can hear his cadence change.
No, there's no such thing as true independence.
Do you think your supporters understand that?
Stop interrupting for a second.
I'm just asking.
At the beginning of this interview, he was speaking relatively quickly. Now we have these great moments of intonation. We have these great moments of emphasis on some of the words that he's saying. We also have Rath there kind of calling Vassy out, saying, stop interrupting. I think in all fairness, Rath interrupted just as much as Vassy, if not more, in this interview. We also have another tongue jut from Rath as he makes the statement about the line of questioning being silly. I think I'll wrap it up there for today, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think that Rath's bold and brash behavior is going to be something that will help the separatist movement gain some attention, or do you think that that type of personality might take away some of the seriousness of the growing sentiment of Alberta's separation? I know some of you guys that are watching this now are from Alberta. Have you guys seen Rath before? Do you like his style of speaking? Let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, you guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I will see you on the next one. Bye! Bye!